Hey everybody, hope you guys are doing well tonight. Sorry I was a couple minutes late getting online here and getting us started. Advisement and registration for summer and fall, as you may know, opens on Monday. So of course, you know, all of my students who are seniors and want to get the exact class with the professor they want and all that are emailing me right and left. So anyway, I just finished with one of the students, so I think we're good to go. Hopefully everybody's having a great week. So what I want us to do tonight is basically we're going to walk through a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to go over in depth the first case study that you guys have. I'm going to talk a little bit more. Hopefully we can get a little bit further through our PowerPoint presentation and talk about some of the topics and stuff that you're going to be dealing with. And then finally, I do hope tonight that we can leave some time maybe for some Q&A and stuff like that. So I'll try not to be too verbose and keep us going here. Hang on one sec. Of course, I always get logged out every single time I try to do this with you guys. So bear with me just one second. Actually, I'm not logged out. It just said I was. Alrighty, so let me do a screen share with you guys. And okay, are you guys seeing my the middle page? Awesome. Thank you, Courtney. All right, so let's talk for a minute about the particular, not the particular, but let's talk specifically about the case study tonight. So this is not due until April the 18th, so you guys do have a little bit of time. I wouldn't put it off till, you know, even if you can't get it to me by the 18th, that's fine. You know, I'm pretty forgiving about that. But I wouldn't put it off too long because you have 2 additional case studies to do. So I just don't want everything to snowball on you and you end up being just like overwhelmed there towards the end. So let's look specifically, let me make sure too, that you guys are still able to see the right stuff. So bear with me just one quick second and I'm going to go back. Okay, there we go. All right, so this looks pretty overwhelming. There's like a million different tools in here and resources and all kinds of stuff. So I'm really impressed with you guys that when I opened up week 3, and for those of you that, you know, are looking ahead just a little bit, you didn't panic and freak out and email me like crazy and all that. There's nothing posted in the instructional virtual office. So like I said, I'm really proud of you guys. You did not panic. Please understand that with this particular assignment, you do not have to do every single one of these tools. These tools are placed here for you as a resource, okay? So let's look first at what you're actually going to have to do and turn in. So let me pull up the directions, okay? And again, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second just to make sure that it's the actual right stuff that you're seeing. Okay, all right, so 2 things to know about the first case study. You can do this individually, or you are welcome to do this with a group. It is completely up to you. So if you decide you want to do it in a group, what most students have done in the past, I'm not going to assign groups necessarily, but if you really want to do something with a group, like I said, you're more than welcome to do that. I would just go into the instructor virtual office and put a post in there that, you know, that says, hey, I'd like to work with a group. Is anybody interested? And then you guys can form your own groups. I would encourage you to work on this as a group, if at all possible, you know, just because it can be a little bit overwhelming, but you do not have to. All right, so what you're going to do is you've got the articles and stuff to read. I encourage you to use your own data. Okay, so data from your school, from your classroom, from your district or parish, something like that, because that way it's actually meaningful to you. So, you know, if I were a classroom teacher and I had access to, you know, some student data, that's what I would use for this project. For example, I had a student email me and ask me, could they use their DIBELS data? Absolutely. Any kind of data is fine. If for some reason you don't have access to data, I have provided you some data sets One is from an urban elementary school in Texas. Another one's for an urban middle school here in Louisiana. You can use my data if you prefer to. But like I said, the whole idea behind this assignment is for you to get in, mess around with some data, do some data digs, begin to understand some of it. And I want it to be meaningful. So if you have access to data that you can actually use, I think that's preferable. Not required, but certainly preferable for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a PowerPoint with 10, I just realized I just put 10 to 16 and then I have a 20 in there. Let's just say minimum of 10, maximum of 20 slides. They're going to answer 10 questions, okay? So these 10 questions, as you can see, are spelled out here for you. And again, PowerPoint, remember PowerPoint, it's not etiquette, but I guess it's best practices for PowerPoints, bullets, things like that. I'm not looking for a dissertation. So you're going to answer these 10 questions about your data. And I'll go in and fix this and correct it as soon as we're done tonight. Sorry about that. But no more. So at least 10. And again, I've got 15 in the parentheses. I must have been brain dead when I did this. So anyway, 10 to no more than 20. Answering these 10 questions, okay? Also too, I used to have everybody, and I thought I corrected this, but apparently I may have posted my draft version instead of my final, so I apologize. The only thing that you're actually going to submit to me is the PowerPoint presentation and the template. Now, if you do all of these tools, or as many of them as you want to, you don't have to submit them, but you can submit them and I will give you 3 extra points on your final course grade if you choose to do so, okay? So 2 things are required to be submitted again. The PowerPoint presentation that is answering these 10 questions, and then the template that I'm about to show you here in a minute. If you choose to do 1 or more of these tools, depending on how many you do, if you do all of them, you get 3 extra points. If you do roughly 1/3 of them, you get 1 extra point. If you do 2/3 of them, you would get 2 extra points. And again, that's added to your final grade for the entire course, okay? So any questions so far about at least the directions? Clear as mud, huh? All right, let me show you then the actual template. Okay, and again, let me go back to sharing again. Let me enable editing real quick. Okay, share screen. All right, there we go. Hang on, I'm just going to look and make sure there's nobody that's waiting in the wings here for me to let them into the course. Nope, looks like we're good. Okay, so what you're going to do here is this is the template that you're going to complete and fill out and submit along with your PowerPoint, okay? So it's pretty, I think, self-explanatory, but then again, I live with data all the time, so, you know, probably it's pretty self-explanatory to me, but let me kind of walk you through what you're going to be doing. All right, so whatever data that you're going to use, it's broken down into how well you feel like you understand that particular part of your data, okay? Now, if everybody said, you know, I'm not expecting everybody to be, I can teach someone else, you know, category, or, you know, it's fine if you're like, I don't even know what this is. That's okay. This is really about a self-analysis, okay? So I'm not looking for everybody who is so proficient with their data that they can teach it to somebody else, but I'm also, you know, hoping that not everybody's in the category of I don't know what this is, you know, for everything. So what you're going to do is, under learning targets, explain how important planning, how improvement planning will improve student learning and system effectiveness. Rate yourself. Then tell me what you think this means. And again, I'm not looking for a specific right answer. So the way that I might answer this might be something like, when we engage in improvement planning, we are able to better determine the areas that our students need additional support. That's what that would mean to me. you could put something completely different. If you don't know what it is, you could say this means I have no idea what this is about or how to use it. Okay. Another example. So interpret district required performance measures and metrics. Okay. What does that mean? Well, I am able to successfully interpret that performance measures and metrics, and I use this information to as a part of my unit and lesson planning. Okay, kind of get where I'm going with this. Like I said, I'm not looking for a specific answer. I just want to kind of know where you are and how you and what you know or don't know about each one of these targets. Okay. So like I said, not a right or wrong answer. Now, if you're doing this as a group, I think you have to come to a consensus about this. And if you've got, let's say, 5 group members and everybody's like, oh, I can teach this, and one's like, I have no idea what it is, just kind of tell me that when you talk about this means, okay? Now, over here in the reflections column, that's really just for your personal notes or whatever. You don't even have to fill that out if you choose not to. You can leave the reflections blank, okay? Now, let's look at, so we've talked about giving you a couple examples of the learning targets. You rate yourself, tell me what you think this means or how you might use it. If you want to add something here in a reflection, like I would really love some additional resources about, blah, 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 or whatever, you can put that. If you don't want to put anything there, that's fine. It's not going to impact your grade positively or negatively with that, okay? So the next section talks about how you would use data if you were creating a school improvement plan. Okay, so this part up here is really, like I said, self-reflection. Then we're getting a little bit more specific. Hey, Candace, I see that you've raised your hand. Go ahead.
Quick question. If we are going to work in a group and let's say we want to use the Dibbles data that I asked you about, and they're going to use my Dibbles data, whoever, wanted to work in a group with me. Do I need to worry about pi? Because obviously, whenever they're going to be looking at all this data from my school, it will obviously have tons of student names and things like that on it. And that would be a lot of things to try to blank out if I were to try to get rid of the student names and numbers and things like that on all the data.
I'm going to give you the technical answer, and then I'm going to give you the what I think you can do answer. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So according to university policy, if we're going to share specific student information and data, we have to have a release form from every student's parent to be able to share their data. Okay. Because this is a very closed group, and people can't access this information unless they're part of this group, and we're using this solely for learning purposes, you don't have to go through that. I think we have to make sure, though, that everybody agrees that whatever data we talk about and particular students, et cetera, in this context has to stay within this context. Does that make sense? So I couldn't go out and go, well, you know what, at Candace's school, we've got, Johnny Smith here who, that kid, his Dibble score is, -4. I mean, you can't really have that, but you know what I mean. And talk about it. I think we have to kind of go through the honor system here. And I've never had a problem before.
Okay, because I was just thinking about the daunting task of trying to get rid of names and student numbers on all the data.
Yeah, it would be a lot to redact. That is for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, I think we're all professionals, and in a learning capacity, like I said, we just can't share the data outside of the class. Okay. And if for some reason, guys, it's kind of like, I have to do these conflict of interest statements when I review grants, like for the U.S. Department of Ed. And basically I'm just pledging that I'm not going to share this information or whatever. It's the same kind of thing, guys. I think we just have to be on the honor system and understand that we're going to keep the data within ourselves. Okay. All right. Now on this particular part of the assignment, this talks about using data within the school improvement plan. Okay. So what types of data do you think is going to be most helpful in helping us to identify trends? Okay, so again, this could be, obviously if I'm looking for trends, I'm probably going to want to use some quantitative data. And it would be really helpful if I had student achievement data, as well as value added data. Okay, so you're just going to tell me, what type of data you're going to use. And then tell me if you have access to that as a local data source. If you don't, just put not available. So for example, like I said on this first one, if I'm looking for trends, I really want to use quantitative data, not qualitative. We've talked a little bit about that. And the types of data that I'm really wanting to look at is I want to look at achievement by grade level and percent of mastery. And then I also, because if I want to look at growth, so I'm going to use a value added model. Then over my data sources here, well, I get student achievement information from my state assessments, so I could just put state assessments. And if you're lucky enough to be in a district that does value added data, you could just put, benchmark data or whatever. If you don't have access to that data that you think would be helpful and useful, just put data not available. Okay. So what are the most significant weaknesses in performance? So what, based on, what you're looking at with your data, obviously, pick 1 to 2 priorities that you feel like the data is really showing you. So for example, if I'm using value added, I notice that my high achieving students are not gaining a year's growth when I look at their achievement scores. So that's my priority concern. And how do I know that? Again, it's from our district benchmarks. Okay, so just kind of go through here. I think the questions hopefully are pretty self-explanatory. If they're not, once you kind of get into this, we can talk more about it next week in our meeting. Okay. Then the last part of this, and please do not think that in these last few pages here that you have to fill out every box. Okay. So what you're going to look at is what are some assessments that maybe you want to focus on. And if you just want to focus on one assessment, that's fine. If you want to focus on 2 or 3, that's fine as well. So going back to Candace's example, if I want to use DIBELS, that's the only assessment I would use. And I would go through and talk about each one of these. So DIBELS basically has to do with reading and literacy. When is that available to us? I know when we did DIBELS, we would do it 3 times a year. So, for us, it was like we did it in September. I'm trying to remember, like January, and then again in May. So those would be when it's available. For which students? Well, depends on, you want to do it for all your students. Maybe you're using that just for your special needs students, etc. Grade level, again, if you're going to target a specific grade level or if it's going to be everybody. When we talk about metrics, it's just basically what is the standard that we're expecting students to achieve. So, in DIBELS, it may be that we're looking for a particular fluency rate, or we're looking at a percentage of mastery of sight words. There's a lot of different pieces that I could choose. Data views and reports, if this may be something that you get back from your district, you get back from the state, or it could be something you're generating yourself. Just tell me where it's coming from. Okay. And then what questions might you have about this data and information that you feel is important? Then you're going to look at using that assessment. Okay, so we'll keep using the DIBELS. So what is your performance indicator that you're hoping to achieve? Okay, so it could be something like we are hoping to increase fluency by 10% for all students in 3rd grade. So what content area? Well, that's obviously reading. Which metric? And again, it's basically a redundant question from right here. Which students? Again, it may be all 3rd graders. It may be our African-American boys in 5th grade, which disaggregated group, that's kind of the same thing. And what are we noticing in terms, do we have a comparison point? Okay, so maybe if we're picking a particular population of students, let's say African-American boys. And so we are looking at their DIBELS fluency rate in 4th grade, and we're comparing it to how the same group of students did in 3rd grade. That's what you would tell me, okay? Amount, again, it kind of goes back to that performance indicator. How much do you want them to improve? Can be a percentage, it can be a specific number of points, it can be really pretty much anything that's measurable. And then over what?
Ms. Johnson?
Yeah, go ahead.
So right here, if in the chart above this, I broke down the different pieces of the DIBELS indicator, like, so let's say I put letter naming fluency on one, oral reading fluency on one, like let's say that I put the 5, different main indicators from the DIBELS assessment. Down here on this next one, if I was just doing increasing fluency, would I then do something like put, for ORF, would I be comparing the growth for fluency between like a 1st grade and a 2nd grade, or like talking about the comparison for the trend?
You could do it either
or
from
like beginning of the year from the
Right.
1st grade class to the end of the year.
Yeah, you can do it by grade level from year to year. You could do it like you said, like if you gave the first assessment in say September, and then your next one was in November, you could compare that. You compare it against a standard. So for example, we want all of our students to be a fluency rate of 90% or better. And so you could tell me, okay, so in November, we had 70% of our students at, whatever. Does that kind of make sense? You choose how you want to compare the data.
Okay, so it doesn't matter which groups,
No.
but it's probably easier to pick one within a grade level there for those indicators.
Yeah, and I'm only looking for, don't give me more than 3. You only have to give me 1. But
Right.
the idea is, like I said, I want you to kind of dig deep enough into the data that you can think about what's going to be the most valuable to me in terms of trying to move student achievement based on a particular assessment and data piece.
So I could essentially use their overall like DIBELS score, the one that averages them all up together at the end. You know how it gives you that overall score at the end?
Yeah, you could definitely do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, it just depends. Like, for example, when I was principal at MacArthur High School in Irving, we were a recognized campus, and we had one subgroup who was keeping us from being exemplary, which was the top rating. It's kind of like the A. And so pretty much everything we did was we were going to maintain what we were doing with everybody except this one subgroup, which happened to be our second language learners, and it had to do with writing. So if that's your situation, like everybody else is kind of rocking along and meeting or exceeding the standard, but you've got one particular set of students or data or whatever that you really want to focus on, you can be that specific, or you can be very global. It's really up to you and based on what you need at the time. Making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the trend statement is pretty much just a summary of what we just said here. So, for example, within our second language learners in writing, we are making incremental, however small, gains in writing proficiency. And we need to accelerate that to get to the state standard. Okay. Probably not my best statement. I'd have to work on that a little bit. So again, you only have to do one. Please don't give me, however many there are here, 15 or 18. This is actually pulled directly from a school improvement plan template. So that's why there's so much, because if you're actually writing a whole plan, there's going to be certain areas that you have to address. And that's why this chart is here. But I only want one. Okay. Then the other thing that you're going to do is, how do you plan for data analysis? So again, look at your data and tell me, in what area did you not meet the expectations? What sub indicators did you not meet it? You know, and if you don't have the data like for the district, so Candace, going back to the DIBELS, you may not have the district data. You can just put not applicable, okay? And then as you kind of go through these, like I said, if something doesn't apply or you don't have it, that's fine, put not applicable. Particularly after, you know, we've all been through the pandemic and the shutdown of schools and all, we don't have access to all the data that we've had previously. So some of this just isn't going to apply, okay? Then the same thing's true down here. If you're not looking at or focusing on math, you're only going to focus on reading, that's fine. Just give me that data. If you're not going to do math, reading, writing, or science, but you have a different content area that you want to look at, or even something, let's say you want to look at attendance, that's fine. Or discipline referrals. Just write the content area here and tell me what the source of your data is, okay? And again, some of this is probably not going to be applicable. I don't think most of you are going to have disaggregated data for growth. You may not even have data disaggregated by group. So again, just put NA and you're fine. Like I said, I'm not going to get too hung up on any of that. Then again, it's kind of the same thing here. You're just taking one particular area, and then, like I said, it can be math, reading, writing, science. It could be something else like attendance. It could be teacher retention. It could be anything. And pick one. Tell me who is involved in that. So let's say, again, we're going to use DIBELS, and so we're looking at all third graders in reading. When are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do our assessments 3 times a year. And then what are we going to use? Well, we're going to use the DIBELS assessment, okay? Then again, just taking back to where up here, if I can find it real quick, where we talked about that priority statement, or the, oh, here, right here, priority concerns. Okay, so you're just going to take that same information and apply it. Sorry, a lot of scrolling to do here. Apply it down here and just be a little bit more specific, okay? So who are my students? Well, Huffy already told me that up earlier. When are you going to do this? And what materials and tools, okay? And again, you don't have to, if you don't have information, just put not applicable, okay? Then you have 7 questions to actually, oh gosh, I don't know why I have 2012, 2013 on there. That was a long time ago. But anyway, you're going to answer those questions and they can be very short. You can use bullet points. Please don't give me an entire dissertation or even an essay. Just kind of hit the main points for these 7 questions and you will be done. Okay, so what questions do we have? In that whirlwind tour. Okay, seriously, guys, you're making my life way too easy. I don't know what to do.
All right, Miss Tracy, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Okay. So on here it talks about the school improvement plan, and I know that my school improvement plan always has to do with the math and ELA scores, and I do have access to that data, and I could do the assignment with that. But I was kind of wondering if instead of the school's improvement plan, if I could do like my yearly improvement plan for science. My school and district never focus on science and social studies. But I was just wondering if I could do it from the point of like my data, my analysis of my standards and things like that, instead of our school's improvement plan with just math and ELA. Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's actually a really good idea because as we all know, you know, science and social studies are just as important as our math and our reading and English language arts scores. So yeah, I think that would be fabulous. And I know there is some discussion, you know, some states do require you now to have a school improvement plan based on science and social studies. And I know there's some talk in a lot of the sort of at the national level about an increased or renewed or whatever we need to say, focus on science in particular. So yeah, I think that would be fabulous. Okay, anybody else? Okay, awesome, guys. Well, I'm going to share my screen again just for a second, just to kind of show you. I'm not going to pull all these open, but for example, if you're really kind of I'm not too sure about this. I've given you the Clark County Data Analysis Guide has some really good examples in it. There's also some information here on how to analyze data, actually between this document and this one. Then if you're really having a super hard time just trying to figure all this out, there's a lot of tools here that you can use. Now, like I said, guys, you don't have to do these. If they help you, great. If you're worried about your grade, you want extra credit, do them. I don't think you need to worry, but if you do, that's fine. But like I said, these are just here to kind of help you to understand it. Now, if you're looking for data and you don't have any, here is one set right here. This is from Texas, and like I said, that is an elementary example. And where's my middle school? Did it get? I may need to go back and reload it. Look, I'm not seeing it right off the top here. So yeah, I'll have to go back and reload the middle school data. Sorry about that.
There's more under another tab.
Do what?
There's more data under another tab.
Oh yeah, you're right, there is. Let me go back over here, sorry. Yeah, there is more data under here. Am I in the right one? There we go. There is more data and video directions as well as a sample. And then thank you, there's the middle school data. I just put it in a separate folder. And then here's the data for the elementary school. I would use these two as opposed to going back through everything I just showed you. Okay. I don't know why, gosh dang it. Sorry, I just noticed that says it's hidden from students. That is crazy. I'll fix that too tonight. Okay, any other questions, guys? Going once, going twice? Okay, all right, guys. Then I'm going to go ahead, bear with me just 1 second. Let me kind of close out some screens and let's talk about some data pieces. Let me see where we left off the last time. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to do another screen share. So bear with me just 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So I will tell you that I stole this shamelessly from the Dallas Independent School District. I do have rights to do that because I helped to create some of this back in the day. But one of the things that certainly is supported in the research is the idea of having a data team. Now, a lot of people would say you need a data team that is completely different than maybe your professional learning community that is by content or is by grade level or whatever. I don't know. I could probably debate fairly well the advantages of it being the same team as well as it being a different team. Now, I know what we did in Dallas ISD at the time was we had our professional learning communities and they were pretty much structured around grade level and or content. Okay, so for example, our algebra teachers in high school, they were a professional learning community. And our third grade teachers were a professional learning community in each one of the schools. We chose to make our data teams cross content, cross grade level. So for example, for each data team, we may have had a second grade teacher, third grade teacher, and a fourth grade teacher. And maybe in our high school contents, we may have had an algebra teacher, a geometry teacher, and an algebra 2 teacher. Because we were interested in looking not only at data horizontally, so that's within the content or the grade level, we were also interested in looking at data vertically. So we knew what was happening in the grade before and the grade or content after. Okay, so data teams can be really, really important and can serve a very critical purpose in terms of how we go about looking at student achievement, and we create a system for student accountability as well as school accountability. Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. So you can see that data teams support campus-driven decision-making. They work with data analysis, they make instructional decisions, and they help to set and communicate goals. So let's look at, and I pick on the schools that I was in charge of, so you can absolutely see how this impacted those. Like I said, I didn't use anybody else's data. This is all mine. So the idea was that we really wanted a systemic model to analyze data, particularly for student achievement, and to make sure that we were aligned with our instructional initiatives that we had as a district. Because far too often data exists in isolation and there's no connectivity to teaching, learning, and assessment. So we also know too that there's been a ton of research about how critically important and helpful data can be. So, if you're like, wow, I'm just on fire about data, some really great resources are the DataWise process from Harvard. We've talked about that. Driven by Data by Paul Bambrick-Santoyo. The Data Coach's Guide is another one. And then Richard Elmore's instructional rounds book. Really, this kind of, it's almost like I would choose either DataWise, Driven by Data, or the Data Coach's Guide. And then I would absolutely use Richard Elmore's stuff. There's also a lot of information on the Department of Ed's website about data analysis that you may also find helpful. So we've talked before about models and processes, and they're basically all the same. Everybody's going to use just a slightly different verbiage to talk about this, but the whole core of the idea is student achievement is at the center. Okay. So how do we impact student achievement? Well, we have to have data. So we know that we have to have a data-driven dialogue, and we give lots of feedback about that data. Then we have to look at instructionally relevant questions, then give more feedback, and then here is the process that we follow. So the first thing we do is we create the question. What is it that we need to look at and analyze to impact student achievement? How do we go about organizing for that discussion? So that's where you make decisions about the kinds of data we need, where we're going to get it, how we're going to use it, how we're going to deploy it, etc. So once you kind of know what the problem or issue is, and you look at how you want to pull those data sources, you have to go out and actually do it. So pretty self-explanatory, collect the data. So in a really effective system, steps 1, 2, and 3 are done at either the central office level, or they can be done at the campus level by leadership. So that may include the administrative team, it may include department chairs or team leaders, etc. Then number 4, you actually have to get in there and analyze and interpret the data. Right in here is where you should have all teachers involved. Okay, they don't necessarily need to be worried about the first 3 steps, but unless they actually get in there and get dirty with that data, they're not ever going to own it, guys. So, it doesn't have to be this complex, overwhelming process. There's ways to make it pretty simple and understandable, but once teachers really dig in and look at that data, they're much more likely to be able to act upon that data. So once you do that, the next step is to select actions. So let's say we go through and we look at our math student achievement results, and we find out that, gosh, our kids are doing really, really well with addition and subtraction or math operations, but they really struggle with statistics and probability. That's probably true in every school without even looking at your data. That's probably a true statement. So we have to work with the teachers based on what we've learned from the data to select the actions we're going to do to improve those student achievement results in math around probability and statistics. So when we talk about actions, that's going to include things like how are we going to maybe do student data profiles or student data progress monitoring? What are some of those instructional practices that we need to make sure happens? It's all of those elements or pieces that are going to go into teaching and learning, monitoring and assessing to improve student achievement. And then finally, once we do those actions, we have to implement them and we have to monitor the results. Now, a lot of people think monitor the results means that you're just checking in periodically. Keep in mind that when we monitor results, we have to make sure that we are doing those mid-course adjustments to positively impact our results. So for example, let's say that one of the things that we're going to do as part of our action is that we're going to do a probability and statistics problem every day as an opening activity or bell ringer or whatever you want to call it in math, science, social studies, and English language arts classes. And so we're doing that, and we start looking at some of our formative assessment results, and we find out it's going really well in math and science, but English and social studies are really seeming to struggle with this. So what are you going to do to fix that problem? And it may be that you need to choose a new action. It may mean that you need to give some professional development or support to your English and social studies teachers. But within monitoring, that also means making adjustments to ensure that we're actually getting the results that we're wanting to get. Okay. So let's talk for a second about the data process and how we can analyze. There are a million different models out there. I think I've said this to you guys before. You can use the DataWise model. You can use the Paul Brandberg model. You can use the Data Coach. There's a million different ways to do this. One's not necessarily better than the other. But what we did in Dallas is we sort of read multiple authors, looked at a lot of research, and we created sort of a hybrid model that involves elements of all of those others. So the first thing is frame the question. So you can see here's a little tool right here that kind of helps you to break down each one of these pieces. So you'll see frame the question, on this little chart, we have all of the elements that I just talked you through. So what does it mean to frame the question? So the first step is to determine what information and questions need to be answered. Okay, we've talked about that. So what does that look like? So here's some guiding questions that can maybe help you. If you're like, I don't really know how to frame the question, well, guess what? Here's some guiding questions that can help you to answer that and to be able to set up a data plan, okay? Then the second part, again, more questions, those guiding questions, and you'll notice that this moves from very general into very specific pieces, okay? So what do data sources look like? There's all kinds, at least in Dallas ISD. You can still actually, I think, they may have taken it down now, I don't know, but it was up not too long ago. If you really want to look in depth at some of these tools that Dallas had, you can actually go to this website. And like I said, hopefully they've still got their stuff up there because there's some pretty good tools that, like I said, I think are really helpful. And then, of course, here's some of the references that we used to develop this. And of course, we've talked about, like I said, there's a lot of different models and things like that out there. But these are some of the things that we actually used and looked at to develop our process. So that's just one example. It's not necessarily the best, but it at least is a pretty fully developed model that might be helpful to you as you start to think about and work through some of these assignments. Okay. All right. So it is 6:17. What questions, comments, concerns, things about life do you want to talk about tonight?
Things about life.
Yeah, things about life. Okay.
I already asked all my questions.
Well, if you guys don't have any questions, I mean, we can certainly, since we've gone over the last 2 times, we can earn. Gosh, I really need to go home tonight. I cannot seem to speak or do anything. So anyway, I can give you 12 minutes of your lives back that you didn't expect. So going once, going twice. Anybody? All right, guys, then I'm going to go ahead and end. So you can use these 12 minutes to get started forming your groups for the assignment. So y'all have a great holiday weekend. It's great to see everybody. Y'all take care. Bye.